Hello, welcome to this introduction video on CanJS 6. In this video, we will explore what CanJS is, why you might want to use it, and how to use it. Like React, Vue.js, or Angular, CanJS is a JavaScript framework used to build rich web interfaces. It provides state management, templates, custom elements, and a whole bunch of other features. It's been used successfully on a wide variety of high-profile sites. You should check out CanJS because it has a small but helpful community, it's easy to get started with, but has features that can incrementally make your logic more strict and robust. And CanJS includes a model layer, simplifying data-driven and real-time application development. The rest of this video will highlight these points while showing you how to get started with CanJS. The first, most important thing to know about CanJS is that we are here to help you. Batovi, CanJS's primary sponsor, hosts a free Slack room. We have people actively monitoring the CanJS room for questions during US working hours. We are passionate about helping folks get started, debug issues, or solve complex problems. Drop us a line and we will do our best to help you. Alright everybody, let's see how easy it is to get started with CanJS. And we're going to do something slightly more complex than Hello World, a counter widget. In this counter widget, we click the +1 button and it simply increments the value to its left. All right, so let's get started building this. I'm going to do all of my work in this CanJS folder here on the left. I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to create a mycounter.html. And that is going to be what we see here. So if I write hello there and save this, we cannot see it yet. And that's because, of course, I have to statically host the myCounter HTML page. I'm actually going to host everything inside this CanJS 6 folder. So here I'm in CanJS 6 and using, you can host statically however you want, but I'm going to use Node to install a simple HTTP server globally. And then I'm just going to use HTTP server to host this folder. So now if I go to localhost 8080, my counter should say hello there. All right, so the HTML that we're going to use to make that count and that button look something like this. I'm going to have a count and I'm going to have a span, and in there we'll have a number of the count. And we'll also have a button that will be the +1 button. And just for good measure, I'm going to put this in the body of my page. Yes, I should have other, an HTML tag and such, but we don't really need that just to get started here. Now here is just static HTML, and when I click this +1, it doesn't do anything. What I need to get it to do something at least is get CanJS. And this is one of the first reasons why CanJS is really nice to get started with, is you can run it just from a script tag. You don't need to set up a Webpack build or anything like that. In this case, I'm just going to use a module type build. So type equals module. And this is like a normal script tag, but allows me to import other JavaScript files into this code here. So here's my script type module, script, and I'm going to indent this to the left just so I have a lot of room inside of here. And I want to import CanJS. So I'm going to import from CanJS's CDN, and that is, we use unpackage for that. So I'm going to load unpackage pkg.com, and I'm going to get CanJS 6, can@6 /core.mjs. So this includes everything in what we call core CanJS. It doesn't include a lot of fancy extras. This is just the basic element, custom element, and model parts. And once I've done that, we should just have CanJS running. I can make sure. I'm going to refresh. If I type in can here, I should see something. So this means we have CanJS. Now, CanJS works a lot like all other modern frameworks for the most part. They have some idea of components. In CanJS, your components are actual custom elements. So I want to create a my counter element. And this my counter element is going to have all of the functionality and include its own HTML. So we don't want this HTML inside the page. We're just going to want my counter. But what we need is every time my counter is present in the page, it's going to insert this HTML inside of this element. So we need the custom element class from within CanJS. So we can import that like this. I'm going to import stash element, and that's the name of CanJS's custom element class. And we'll understand what stash means in a moment. So I'm going to import that from CanJS's core. Stash element is a class that is used to create custom elements. And to make classes work in JavaScript, you use this class definition right here. Actually, 1 second. I'm going to save and close this and reopen it so that my syntax highlighting works properly. Adam has a bug there. So if I create a class, I'm going to create that class my counter, and I'm going to extend stash element. So this creates a custom element, my counter, that is extending stash element, which itself extends from HTML element. But this is all what we need to really start creating custom elements. The final thing is I want to register this my counter class to control the behavior anytime an element of this tag is found. And for that, I use the DOM API custom elements registry. So I'm going to do custom elements. I'm going to define my counter tag to use the logic provided by the my counter class. So now if I were to refresh, we'll see the same thing. Here, I'll remove this. We'll see actually nothing, but there will be a my counter element in the page right here, but it doesn't do anything yet because we have nothing inside of here. What I want it to do is to write out inside this element the HTML that was up there before. So this is a stash element, and stash element allows you to use handlebars like templating language called stash inside your class. So you do this as a static property. We call it static view, and you can just put in whatever HTML you want inside here, and this is the HTML of that will get inserted inside any my counter. So now if I save, we see count 0 plus 1. Now, if we were to do this several times, let's do like a BR here and a BR here, and I put in another my counter, you'll actually see 2 counters. And that's because every time a my counter element is found, an instance of my counter is created. But this is just static like we had before. What we really want to do is take a count and write that count to the page. So stash, as I already mentioned, supports a handlebars-like syntax in here. And this can read from any property on instances of the myCounter class. So what we really need is instances of myCounter to have a count property. And if you're familiar with how classes work in JavaScript, they have a constructor. And here you can define properties. Now you make sure you call super. And this will make sure to call stash elements base behavior, set up the class correctly. But after that, we can define whatever properties we want here. So here, I'm just going to create a count, and I'm going to set it to 1, just so we notice a difference. And I'm going to get rid of this other extra my counter. But we really want that count to be 0, so I'm going to put that here. So again, this template will read any properties on instances of the class. Now, what's also pretty cool here, and this is CanJS observability, if I click on my counter, Chrome, this is a handy shortcut, will make that $0. So this is the my counter element. I can read its count. And even cooler, I can set its count to 2. And you'll see that the page just automatically updates. So this is part of what Stash does, is it can track if count changes and automatically update the HTML of the page. But what we want is the ability to increment, just to call increment, and it increase the count. So I'm going to add an increment method. And I'm going to increment the count ++ every time increment is called. Now again, if I go to the page, click on my counter, now I have it as $0 again, I can call increment. And you'll see the number was incremented. But I don't want to be calling it from here. I want the button to, anytime it's clicked, to call increment. Stash also has a syntax that allows you to listen to events in the page and call methods on the class. So in this case, I want to listen to, on the button being clicked, call the this.increment method. I'll save this, and now when we click, it counts. So this again shows you how easy it is to get started with CanJS. You simply import CanJS, you define a class using this familiar object-oriented class-based approach that most developers are familiar with. You simply can set properties and have methods that change those properties, and you can call those methods from your Stash template, and you print out those values from your Stash template. And if you can understand this pattern, you can go pretty darn far with CanJS. One also nice feature of CanJS is that it has really powerful debugging abilities. And I'm not going to go into this very much, but if you click, if you use the debugging tools, you can see here there's a counter, and I can change the value. This shows the my counter view model, and I can change the value here and apply those changes, and it updates here. Most debugging extensions for other frameworks have similar abilities as this, but CanJS goes a step further. It helps you figure out why something happened. For example, I can set a breakpoint when a property changes. In this case, I'm going to pause when my counter's count changes. Now, when I click the button, we see a CanJS stack explaining what happened. A similar explanation is printed in the console. It shows the element that was clicked and the event. It also shows us that it was the onClick handler calling increment that incremented the number. Similarly, if we want to get what is changing the text node, we can inspect the text node that we want to see that's changing. Now this will actually give us the span, but with the span we can get that text node. And then we can use another CanJS debugging tool, CanDebug, log what changes me, and pass that text node to this function, and it'll actually print out the causes of what changes that element. So here we can see that it's the text element is what was passed, and that is mutated by, that is changed by this.count in a Stash template, and this.count in the Stash template is actually changed by my counter's count. CanJS has a wide variety of debugging tools that let you understand how your application works and what your app is doing. This makes it much easier to debug and debug other people's code as well.